So I'm going to read for a bit, Keynote reading, but slightly off-key, I would say. I've had a magical semester with the students, so-called students, and there've been moments of sublime revelation, but alas, not on my side of the room. It's always from them to me. And it's been a crazy privilege. Not to teach, because I'm not sure I've done that, but just to be near, to have nearness to what they're doing. And there will be some wonderful books coming out of that group of people, I can guarantee. And that's over, and I'm reading in a way to thank them and thank this building for welcoming my nervous steps of a Wednesday. This book is set in the 1850s, 60s in America. Well, I say that with confidence, but actually it's my imagined America. Any Americans in the audience, you better not listen, because my American accent will be as annoying as an American actor doing an Irish accent. My get-out clause is that Thomas, who is telling this story, is originally Irish, but has tried to become an American, and it's partly what the book is about. And in this little section, he's telling us about that very important activity which we should all devote more time of our time to, which is buffalo hunting. I think you'd agree. A pastime that has sadly fallen into desuetude. One of my amazing students, Jane Kwan, has instructed me to sing, because one of my tortures in my seminars was getting them to sing. So now this is the revenge. This is why I say off-key note. This will be pretty horrible for you, but it won't last very long. And then we'll go buffalo hunting. Little birdie, oh little birdie, why do you fly so high? It's because I am a pretty little bird, and I do not fear to die. So, thank you. So what happens next day was me and John Cole and Watchorn himself, and also a nice son of a bitch called Pearl. We went up with the scouts to find that herd. We came into marshy ground first, but the Shawnee boys knew the path through, and we weaved along it content enough. Cook had put some of his cooked sparrows in our stomachs. We were after something bigger. Shawnees, seem to remember one of them was called Birdsong, as it happens. Cool-minded, timber-skinned boys they were, giving themselves the old information in their own lingo, had done up their prayer bags the night before. Kinda lucky charms they liked to put together in an old bag made from the scrotum of a buffalo. They were lashed to their ponies' necks now. They rode without saddles. Long before we had news of it, they were going slower. They knew something was close. They brought us about a mile sideways so we could start to work in up the wind. There was a big, low, cigar-shaped hill before us, covered in a dark grass, and the country there was quiet and almost windless, except for a sound you were guessing might be the sound of the sea. There was no sea thereabouts, we knew. Then we breasted the hill. It was giving a horizon of maybe 4 miles, and I drew in my breath, amazed, because right down below us was a herd of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 buffalo. They must have taken a vow of silence that morning. Shawnees now were putting their ponies into a polite trotting, and ourselves likewise. We were to go down as close to the buffalo as we could without stirring them. Maybe buffalo isn't the smartest chicken in the coop. We had the wind in our faces, such as it was. We knew as soon as they felt us there was going to be fireworks. Sure enough, the nearest dozen must have felt us. They started to stumble forward all of a sudden, nearly falling down. We must have smelled like death to them. We hoped we did. Birdsong kicked forward, and we kicked forward. John Cole was a beautiful rider. He streaked through the Indians and fled after the biggest cow he could spot. I had a line on a big cow too. Must have been that we preferred the cow meat. Then the land dipped again. The near buffalo had set everything moving. It was 10,000 hooves then drumming the hard earth, and the whole cavalcade pouring down into the day activity. seemed to swallow them, every last one. Then the ground rose in front of us, and there they were again, the flood of buffalo, like a big boil of black molasses in a skillet, surging up. Goddamn blackberries, they were as black as. My cow had taken a wild run to the right. She was gearing herself to go through her comrades. I don't know if an angel hadn't given her a message. I was on her tail. You've got to treat a buffalo like a killer, like a rattlesnake on legs. She wants to kill you before you kill her. She wants to lure you on too, and then she wants to suddenly run sideways at you, knock down your horse in full flight, and then come back before Saturday and stamp you to death. You'll never want to fall to the ground on a buffalo hunt, if I can just instruct you in that. My cow won't act out of character, but I've got to get myself in close, get a shot into her head as best I can. It's no easy task to keep your rifle raised and ready when your horse is seeming to be an aficionado of every goddamn rabbit hole out there. He better keep his footing. Maybe we are moving at 30, 40 miles an hour now. Maybe we are sheeting along like the wind. Maybe the herd is making a noise like a great storm coming down from the mountains. But my heart was up, and I couldn't care what happened unless I could get my bullet into her. Blooms in my head the picture of the troopers roasting her and cutting great steaks out of her, the blood running down the meat. Well, I am caterwauling now, and I see the other Shawnee, now nameless in my memory. He is riding down a most splendid bull. He is sitting back on his pony Indian style, and he is shooting arrows into the bull, who is only a raging, roaring mass of meat and hair. That sight vanishes in a vanishing second. My own task is at hand. Sure enough, she makes a brilliant-minded lunge sideways at me, just as I think I'm ready to strike. But my horse isn't the first time out against buffalo, and he skips to the right like a good dancer. And now he has drawn a bead on that cow, and I fire, and the lovely orange flame shoots the bullet forth, and the burning black steel is absorbed into her shoulder. That girl is all shoulder. We burn along the grasses together. The herd seems to take a violent turn left, as if to escape her approaching fate. I fire again, then I see her right horn sort of dip down, just a half a foot. Well, glory be to God, that's the good sign. My heart swells, my pride explodes in my breast. Down, down she goes, a blaze of dust and power, and she takes 15 feet to reach a stop. Must have pierced her heart. That's a dead buffalo. But back to Sligo in the 30s. The horror. This is the secret scripture, which is written by a mostly invented person, but I want her to be my great aunt, who was sectioned in the 30s or 40s, I think, committed to an asylum, I think, for being beautiful, also possibly Presbyterian. And when they put her away, they told her immediate family, i.e. my predecessors, i.e. myself, that she had died of TB. So they managed to kill her twice. And so I wrote this book in a way to steal her back from that cold place we had put her. And she is telling in this little section about when she met her husband Tom for the first time. Oh, that's what she means to tell you about. And then she tells you about something else. She's writing her own account in her room in the asylum, so-called then. She doesn't want anyone to read it. I think, like Dante, she wants to meet herself coming back through the wood. She writes to understand something about herself, and then farewell. So this is what she writes. Jane, I'm trying to remember a song for this, and it's just not coming. You'll have to
It's okay.
Cool. Curious to relate, 'twas not in the Café Cairo that I met Tom, but in quite another place. It was the sea itself. It is along the strands of the world that the privilege of possessing children is most blatantly seen. What torment for the spinster and the childless man to see the various sizes of little demons and angels ranged along the tide line, like some species of migratory animal. The human animal began as a mere wriggling thing in the ancient seas, struggling out onto land with many regrets. This is what brings us so full of longing to the sea. I am not an entirely childless person. That story also belongs to the sea, or the strand anyway. My child went to Nazareth, that's what they told me, or that is what I heard them say, but I was not hearing anything very well, very properly in that time. They might as well have said Wyoming. Strand Hill's beach is narrow, heaped, in danger, and the hill of sand itself seems to have drawn up its enormous knees to escape the goings-on below. There is a long, rough promenade where gigs, carts, sidecars, high traps and motor cars used to be parked. The occupants spilling out, I'm sure, always with the same level of human anticipation. The kids barreling away ahead, the fathers laughing, cursing, the mothers admonishing, panicking. All the to-do and turmoil of normal happiness. Knee-length bathing suits vying in eternity with those wondrous bikinis I've only seen in strange magazines. How I would like to have sported one of them. And at first, no doubt, just a few brave houses built on the marsh and acres of blown sand, Scotch grass, the land rising and rising until eventually touching on the realm of Knocknarea, where Queen Maeve sleeps in her stony grave. From the top of Knocknarea, you can see the beach at Strand Hill, but the people are only pins, and anything the size of a child is just a dust mote in your eye. I have looked down from there, despairing and weeping. All that country was my country later. Strand Hill, the mad woman of Strand Hill. Well, at first a few houses risked on that uncertain ground, then the old hotel. And then huts and more houses, and then sometime in the vanished 20s, Tom McNulty built the Plaza Ballroom. A glorified corrugated iron warehouse with a round roof, a square concrete front to the hall, with an oddly modest door and a ticket window, the brightness of both beckoning, promising. Oh, and a tumultuous whirlwind of dreams rising from the approaching crowd every Friday night, reaching no doubt as far as heaven to comfort God in the doubts of his creation. That was Tom McNulty's work, father and son, to put a ticket on those dreams, and I felt that dream in me with passionate completeness. To sit here writing this, my hands as old as Methuselah's, look at these hands. Ah, but no, you cannot, but the skin is thinnest. Did you ever see the shell of a razorfish? They are strewn all about Ross's Strand. Well, there is a filament of transparent stuff that covers those shells like a drying varnish. It is strange stuff. That is my skin now. I fancy I can count my bones. The truth is my hands look like they've been buried a while and then dug up. They would give you a fright. I have not looked in a mirror for about 15 years. The first few feet of water at Strand Hill were safe enough. In summer they were like a bath. The sea there made only the slightest effort at going in and out, it always seemed to me. Maybe the children peeing in the water had something to do with it, with the heat, I mean. It was lovely though. Myself and Chrissy and the other girls from the Café Cairo. Mrs. Prunty always tried to employ good girls for the cafe, but good girls that looked good, which is a different thing. I think we looked like young goddesses. Mary Thompson could have been a picture in a magazine. Winnie Jackson was a picture once in the Sligo Champion. Miss Winnie Jackson enjoys the fine weather at Strand Hill. Her in her beautiful one-piece bathing suit sent down to her in a box from Arnott's in Dublin on that Dublin to Sligo train. There was style for you. She had a lovely plump bust, and I think the lads felt only despair looking at her, that they would never even get talking to her. Our skins going all African in the steaming heat of August. Our faces bright red sometimes in the evenings, going home across the Strand, burnt off of us, and lying in bed then in the town, hardly daring to let our shoulders touch the sheets, happy. And then the skin calmed down the next morning and longing to get away out to the beach again, and then again, happy. Just straightforward, ordinary girls we were. We liked to bring as much despair as we could to the lads, who watched on the sidelines of our happiness like sharks, devouring our attributes with their eyes. Sometimes I'd get out talking to a lad at the dance. Lads didn't say much, and when they did talk, they didn't say much worth hearing, but that was all right. There were all sorts at the dance, toffs from the town, and lads with trousers too short for them showing their socks, or bare legs stuck into battered shoes. There were always a few donkeys tied up outside, and nags of one sort and another, and carts heeled up. The mountain spilled out its sons and daughters like a queer avalanche. lovely humanity. Father God was always there, or some such one or other of the curates, the herons among the minnows. By God, there was some sort of dance hall act, I seem to remember. Or maybe I imagine that. I believe they railed against dances in the church, but I wouldn't have been privy to that. There wasn't supposed to be much touching. 'Twould be queer cold dancing without touching. 'Twas lovely to snuggle up to a lad at the end of a dance, you sweaty and him all sweaty too in the summer, the smell of soap and turf off him, and that stuff in their hair that time. Brilliantine was the name, I think. There'd be fellas there whose fathers and mothers probably spoke Irish in the back hills of Sligo, and who from going to pictures now and then had the idea they had obligations to look like stars on the silver screen. Unless it was looking like Irish patriots they were trying to be, maybe that was it too. Michael Collins had been a strong man for the grease in his hair. Even De Valera was well slicked down. And Tom McNulty's band blowing up a storm. Young Tom standing there at the edge of the stage with his trumpet or clarinet raised, blasting out the sort of music we had then. You had to have the jazz for the dance, but also the foxtrot was still danced there, and even the waltz. Tom even had a recording made called Tom McNulty's Ragtime Band. By Jesus, that sent the hall into a frenzy. There was a light shining out of Tom then. Of course, at that time, Tom was just the great man I had never spoken to, unless it was in the cafe to say, "What would you like?" To which the answer would most likely be, "China tea and a dead fly bun, Earl Grey for the brother." He was dead keen on the dead fly buns. I wonder if they still have them. They were like religious objects at that time. You couldn't have a cafe without them. What would be the point? It is funny how fixed everything was in those times. Dead fly buns, cream cakes, eclairs, cherry buns with white icing on top. 'Twas like those things were as ancient and established as whales, dolphins, mackerel, like natural occurrences, the natural history of the cafe. It mattered altogether that my father was gone. But somehow I was able to tuck that in under the pillow of my hair, to sleep on it, as it were. I couldn't help the happiness. When I woke in the morning, yes, there was my mother to see to, but I was able to feed her and look after her. She never said anything or went anywhere, just kept at the house in her stripy housecoat. And there was that energy in me, like a motor car being started with a starting hand, cranking me up. I was cranked up mysteriously every morning I woke. I was aflame with energy. It swept me out of the house and through the streets of Sligo and in through the glass doors of the Cafe Cairo, and had me kissing my friend Chrissy good morning and laughing, and if Mrs. Prunty was around, she would give me her shy smile and I would be jubilant. It is always worth itemizing happiness. There is so much of the other thing in a life, you had better put down the markers for happiness while you can. While I was in that state, everything looked beautiful to me. The rain slicing down looked like silver to me. Everything was of interest to me. Everyone seemed at ease with me, even those slit-eyed corner boys of Sligo, with the yellow fingers from the coffin nails they smoked, the yellow stain above their lips where the fag was stuck in permanent, accents like bottles being smashed in a back lane. There now, all that comes back unbidden. I sat down today to write of Tom and the sea, rescuing me in the sea of happiness. I plunged in. I think I knew where I was going. It is curious to me how I remember so completely the feel of that light wool bathing suit on my skin. It had 3 thick stripes alternating, and I had saved the whole winter for it. You couldn't have found a nicer one in Sligo. A hot Irish day is such a miracle, or we become mad foreigners in a twinkle. The rain drives everyone indoors and history with it. There is a lovely lack of anything on a hot day, and because our world in its inner truth is so wet, the surprised greens of the fields and hills seem to burn with a sort of bewilderment, a wonderment. The land looks lovely to itself, and the girls and boys along the strand are painted into the tawny yellows and the blues and greens of the sea, also burning, or so it seemed to me. The whole town seemed to be there, everything suffering the same brushstrokes of the heat, everything joining and melding. I don't know if the plaza existed just at that time. I must have done because I'd seen Tom McNulty play. But if it did, it would have been 1929 or after, even so. I wasn't exactly a girl, but I am confused about this. It is hard to know a person's age in a bathing suit in the riot of the sunlight, and I can't see what age I was. I am peering back with my mind's eye, and all I see is fabulous glitter. And the undersea, just as glittering, speckled, chained in miracle somehow. That wonderful half-blindness the eyes have underwater, blurred because the sea itself is a huge lens, like you are wearing the sea itself before your face. So it's gone even more like a painting, a furious mad painting. There was a whole book of them in the town hall library, the fellas that painted in France and were laughed at to begin with like they didn't know how to paint. I won't risk writing one of the names, but I do remember them. Hard, harsh names and troubled lives to match. I can say them in my head as I write, but I'd be ashamed to spell them wrong. And myself, in that undersea, my whole body loosened, but also sharpened. My lungs rich with air at first, and then beggared. And the head lighter, lovelier, and the chiller water deeper, washing my face, asking my face who it was, what shape it was, in infinite detail. Suddenly I am longing to tell Dr. Green about this, I don't know why. I imagine he would be interested in it, it would please him, but I would also feel he would read something into it. He interprets things, which is dangerous, extremely. Oh yes, the beach of Strand Hill, high tide as it was, is good for a little, then it plunges down. You are suddenly in the big water of the bay there. Big muscle, enormous, like the famous Hudson River. No, not as big as that, of course, but I felt I was not so much entering as touching something vast, flexing there under God's eye. And could I feel it pull me out swiftly, deeper? I don't know. I do know I gave my heart to it. I do know I was moved by it. Maybe I wept. Can you weep underwater? It must be possible. How long was I swimming without coming up? A minute, 2, 3, like a pearl diver in the South Seas, whatever they are, wherever they are. Myself and my bathing suit. And inside the suit, a little pocket with 2 bob in it, which would be my fare back to Sligo on the old green bus for safety's sake, stuck in that pocket, like something you could keep a scapular in if you were Catholic. And I suppose my youth, my softness, my hardness, my blue eyes, my yellow hair sleeking underwater, and maybe 300 sharks out there, beginning to be in the neighbourhood of sharks. Wonderful, wonderful, I didn't care. Become a sort of shark. The great pull of the current beginning to take me like a word lost in a swell of music. Then in all that happiness, suddenly enveloped, stolen back, taken up by human arms I knew, expert, almost devious, and this person, sleek and round and strong, raised me up through the wild glitter, and we broke the surface, and there was the roaring world again, and the heaving sea, and the sky, whether up or down, I didn't know. And the swimmer drew me back to the strand with the boys and the girls, buckets, the old cannon pointing out to sea, the houses, the plaza, the stunned donkeys, the few motor cars, Sligo, Strand Hill, my fate as woeful as my father's, my ridiculous, heartless, funny fate. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could just pick them all back up, all those women and babbies that we wrong, give them their lives, and in that manner have our lives given properly to us. This is a long, long way, which was, again, in hope I wrote it that I could invent a great uncle. I did have 3 great uncles at the war, apparently. They were all the sons of James Patrick Dunn, who was the chief superintendent of the old Dublin Metropolitan Police before independence. So a family positioned precariously in Irish history, you might say. But anyway, this little part of his story, which is in the 3rd person, but it doesn't stray too far from him, really, is just their effort at the war, his Sergeant Major, Christy Moore, and his friends, to have a sing-song. That's all they're doing. They're trying to... It's a survival tactic. Because when I wrote this book in 2003, I thought, well, if you still want to call these guys traitors in British uniforms, whatever you want to say about them, at least let's see what they went through for 3 years. And of course they went through things so ferocious, I think they would have extinguished you or me in an afternoon. They went through 3 years of it. And this is just them trying to entertain themselves of an evening in Flanders. Rather disgracefully, I confused Picardy with Flanders, which apparently are not the same place. And I remember a very wonderful poet saying to me, you should change that. And I never did. Because I have a feeling most of these soldiers had no idea where they were. So anyway, this is Willie Don. Willie's young, he's only 18 or so. And he's supposed to have a singing voice, which actually was something that plagued me as a child, because people always asked me to sing, which was the most terrifying thing anyone could ever ask you to do. Thanks, Jane Paul. So there are a few little bits of song caught up in this. And Christy Moran is from Monkstown Farm. I don't know if you know this Radiant district. It's the sort of working class district above Monkstown itself, which is very expensive part of Dublin. But these amazing people live there, tucked in behind everything. And I knew people from there. I'm relieved to tell you, when I was growing up as a young middle-class boy in Monkstown, and they were a sort of saving grace of life. And Christy Moran's from there. He's the sergeant major. Actually, Christy Moran, we bought an old house, me and Ali, in Wicklow, and it took 2 years to put it back together. And Christy was my builder. That's to say, my saviour, because he knew we had no money, so he was getting up. He'd drink his bottle of whiskey at 9, and then he'd get up at 6 and come down to me, and we'd do some more work on the house. So I thought he was the perfect man to send back to the First World War to look after my great uncle. That's to say that the Sergeant Major exists, but my great uncle possibly only in this book. But you will see that's how mad one's project can be as a writer, to do these mad things. But in another way, it's a little proof fiction of Einstein's more complete theory of time, which tells us that all things are happening everywhere, always. That no event in time is in a narrative. They are all discretely existing in the same moment. I hope that's true. Everything else Einstein said seems to have been true. Christy Moore. Sing the half of Mary, why don't you, said Christy Moore. That's kind of a religious song, said Willie Dunn. The half of Mary. He would not dream of correcting the Sergeant Major. And it's in Latin. They were having a bit of a party. It was called a concert, but there were no real entertainers. They had been given the little shed where these things took place, so they had a platform and 4 dozen chairs. Men who could find no place to sit were standing happily at the back, and most of them had found at least a bottle of beer. Then a man got up with that sudden air and manner that seemed to characterise an Irishman's idea of a singing party. Everyone hushed immediately. No one needed to be urged to silence. The man threw his head at an angle, put his hand to his face. It was very strange. Perhaps he was the sort of man who would usually have preferred to sing behind a door and not be seen by the company. Some of the best singers were behind the door singers, Willie in life had observed. The soldier struck his first note and passionately gave a ballad from the days of the Crimea. It was very lonesome, tender and bloody. There was a young girl in it and a soldier in a deck. The listeners were stilled because in the song there was a melody that brought from their own memories coloured hints and living sparks of the past. The past was a valued thing, but it was also dangerous to them in the toxic wastelands of the war. It needed a box of safety around it, and this small room for concerts was as good as they had found. Each man to his own inward thinking, glimpses of the beloved faces left behind, shadows of arguments unfinished and regretted, the sense of youth not vanishing but being submerged in a killing sea from which no one might emerge, bathed in the acid blood of bomb or bullet. Stretch of road loved and itemized, fold of field, loved turn of shoulder in a wife, her feet crossing the boards of a bedroom, her clothes thrown across a chair. The voice of a singing child, the sound of a child peeing in the pot, the tremendous affection of son or daughter, soft hair, big eyes, the struggle to find meat and cake. For single men, the memories of their Gretas, foul words and good words, failed words of love and triumphant, how human nature fell ever short but could be summoned to illumine the dark tracks of a life nonetheless. All the matter and difficulty of being alive in a place of peace and a place of war. The man finished the song, and there was another kind of silence, the silence of men whose heads were seeing old pictures and their minds were thinking old thoughts. And then there was tremendous applause. It was the silence before the applause that had pleased the singer most. That is a beautiful song, said Christy Moran. Fair play to you, Private. Christy Moran himself longed to sing The Minstrel Boy, but he was gripped by a kind of horror and unseating fear. He had sung that song for his wife many times, and she had been kind enough not to complain of his croaky tones, and that oftentimes he had forgotten the words and stumbled. He wanted to sing it because he suddenly desired greatly to converse with his companions, to communicate to these men under his command his gratitude to them and his love. It was not a thought that had come to him before. He wanted them to stand in place of his listening wife, with their sharp, long features and her ruined hand lost in a miserable accident in their house. He wanted to tell them about his wife, obscurely, desiring but terrified they might laugh at him, worse, laugh at her for what had befallen her, a laughter that would be worse to him than bullets. How guilty he felt when he thought he had come out to the war because he could not live with such trouble. The distress of his wife was worse to him than any charging Hun or gas attack. He could not look at the murky vista of such matters, although he adored her in his heart, but adoration in the heart did not necessarily allow a life that he could bear. He wished suddenly he could come down away from what he was to the men and say these things and sing the song that was most special to him. A beautiful song indeed, said Private O'Hara. O'Hara was a bit of a musician, because his brother had a band in Sligo called O'Hara's Orchestra, and sometimes he used to fill in for the piano player who was consumptive. The sea air of Sligo was heavy with rain and moisture, and that was good for neither houses nor people with a consumption. The rooms sweated with dew-like damp, and the lungs of sufferers flared up, and blood was spat. The piano player was a giant of a man. He could walk to the top of Nade's Carn and place his stone on top of all the others, and with the best of them as tradition bid him to. But those little insects that got into him, or whatever it was, gave the man consumption. Whatever it was, loved the damp air and living inside a giant. So when the giant was indisposed and at home with his mother coughing his life out, Pete O'Hara sat in with the sheet music and banged out the tunes and the ballads with his brother, the dapperest man in County Sligo, with a straw hat as neat as a cape. So O'Hara rose now like a prince coming into his kingdom, with a bit of sheet music being extracted from his army jacket. And much to the friendly jealousy, the painful friendly jealousy of Christy Moran in that ordinary spot of Flanders, he placed the music on the piano and scanned it short-sightedly and sang a new song that they hadn't heard, although it was all the rage in the music halls of England. It was called Roses of Picardy. It was a song written by a magician, Willie thought, designed to slay the hearts of simple men. Roses are shining in Picardy, in the hush of the silver dew. Roses are flowering in Picardy, but there's never a rose like you. And the roses will die with the summertime, and our roads may be far apart, but there's one rose that dies not in Picardy. 'Tis the rose that I keep in my heart, sang wily Private O'Hara's plain as a good, so the words would pierce home with proper violence to the composure of his mates. They had never heard the song before. Many at song's end were weeping openly. My God, said poor McNaughton. He was mopping at his eyes with a sleeve like a bad actor. His big doughy face was melting and as red as a red art. Smith looked at McNaughton, and then Smith patted McNaughton on the shoulder. It was an extraordinary matter, and one that Willie vowed in his heart to remember. How softened they were by the song. It was as if at those moments they felt queerly vindicated, all doubts and sorrows abating. That was O'Hara's strange work that Flanders night. In Picardy itself, there's one rose that dies not in Picardy. There was a long silence then again in the room. Maybe there were 60 men there, all Irishmen of the battalion, the Royal Dublin Fusiliers. And many had seen hundreds killed, and many had killed. Willie himself had killed. Was the song a memory of what they were? Or was it still possible they might be ordinary, loving, imperfect fellas again in some other guise of peace? Well, Jesus, said Christy Moran, I don't know if I can stand it, or if any of us can stand it, lads, but Willie don't. For fuck's sake and the love of God, would you give us your half of Mary, please? Come on, Willie, said O'Hara, and I'll cut the tune out on the piano if you like. All right, said Willie, but it's kind of religious. And in Latin, yeah, we know, said the Sergeant Major, but isn't the fucking Mass in Latin? Sure, we all know our bit of Latin, don't we, lads? Yeah, come on, Willie boy, Smith shouted, maybe to shift himself out of his sentimental state. So Willie started to sing the Ave Maria. Well, it was the very self-same song he had sung for a singing competition when his father witnessed his undoing. But he had heard that twiddly bit between the verses now, and he knew he was ready for it. Ave Maria, he sang in the long drawn-out notes of Schubert. Gratia plebis. It was true what his mother believed about him. He sang like an angel might sing if an angel were ever so foolish as to sing for mortal men. His voice was strange and high, but not a countertenor. It just seemed to put a knife into the air. The notes were so clear and strong. Like a true singer, he could sing soft with strength and sing loud without hurting the ears. But the Ave Maria was all the same firm tone of things. The Latin itself allowed the men to keep the song from catching in the nets and snares of memories. It was all new and of the present. It seemed to be about their courage and their solitariness and the effort they made in desperation to form a bridge from one soul to another, and that these bridges were bridges of air. The word Maria they knew because it was the name of the Mother of God. From mother's knee to now, they had been inculcated with all the promises and warnings of their Catholic faith. Few had gone further than the teachings of school, and their faith was bare in its bones, but strong for all that. They thought of heaven as the next stop without question. They knew it was so because their mothers, their fathers, and their priests had told them so. Willie crossed the gap between the verses with a lead, without a hitch. O'Hara didn't even notice. If that bloody judge would have heard him now, first prize with a fucking ribbon to prove it. Ave Maria Grazia, plain is full of grace. And many of the men caught there was just the Hail Mary all dressed over in other lingo. The prayer of their childhoods and their country. The prayer of their inmost minds that could not be sundered, that could not be violated, that could not be rendered meaningless even by slaughter. The core inviolable, the flame unquenchable. And Willie sang, and maybe in truth he was an amateur. His breathing, O'Hara noted, was jagged and awkward, but the admiration of his dead mother was in it. Indeed, as Willie's mind now leaped to think, to remember the tone of a child in a room in Dalkey singing to his mother after the birth of his sister Dolly that killed her, his father sitting sternly back in the scullery and going out for a sudden walk into the dark, God knew where, and Willie, aged 11, sneaking in to see her, a thing he had forgotten till this moment of singing, to be with her, and then singing that song to her with the pennies on her eyes, and the midwife cleaning the baby in the front parlour, and no one there in the bedroom, only the distant heave of the Dalkey sea, and his song, Ave Maria, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, and his mother's face not listening and listening. And similarly now he sang for these ruined men, these doomed listeners, these wretched fools of men come out to fight a war without a country to their name, the slaves of England and the kings of nothing in Christy Moran's secret, bitter work.